Are three Amazon channels, one here in the US, one in the UK, and one in Germany. So really cool, really happy about that. So for you guys watching this and not here, this is Flashback Weekend. Probably one of the best conventions, I think, in the US, don't you guys think?
Yeah.
Isn't that the coolest? Yeah, there's only a few really that I think are killer. I also like Texas Frightmare, and that's it. That's it. The other ones are cool too, but this one is awesome, and Mike and Mia do a great job. So let me, to not draw this out, give you guys a few minutes of history. So back in the 70s, when I would hope I wasn't even around, but I was, because most of you guys probably weren't. Anybody here from the 70s? Yeah. Oh shit, okay. All right, well, so I was making these movies. I was a young kid. I made 5 or 6 films. And I was so in love with stop motion animation. It was sort of what inspired me. I loved the Ray Harryhausen films, and it was very expensive, and I didn't have that kind of budget. So my first, I guess, 6 movies, Mansion of the Doom with Richard Basehart and Gloria Graham, and Stan Winston was my effects guy, and it was Lance Hendrickson's first film, and then Crash with Jose Ferrer and Sue Lyon, and a real sexy Cinderella, which set the way for other kind of weird, sexy movies later. No stop motion animation, so I was really anxious to do a show that had some stop motion, because it was magic back then in the world, way before CGI. People would look at these shots, especially in a trailer, because they all wound up in the trailers, and go, oh my god, that movie must be awesome, it's got stop motion animation. It was like just magic, and I couldn't find anyone who was doing it until I was introduced through a friend to a guy named Dave Allen. So Dave at the time, this is the 70s, was doing, he was making some films. He was an effects wizard, and he was famous at the time for the Pillsbury Doughboy. So if you were around back then, it wasn't CGI like it is now, it was actually a little stop motion guy. But Dave was a Ray Harryhausen protege. So I met Dave, and it was great being in his studio and meeting other people there at the time. And I said, Dave, I'm gonna do this movie called Laser Blast. It needs some aliens, and I'd love these guys to be stop motion guys. And Dave said, well, it's not cheap. The armature is this, and the time is that. It was a lot of money for me and for these movies. And I said, well, can you give us a little break, because we are a low budget movie. He said, what's the story about? I said, it's kind of a, in retrospect, really silly. Have you seen the Mystery Science Theater on Laser Blast? Well, for those of you who don't know the story, stop motion aliens, because we finally did the deal with Dave, arrive on Earth, and then they have to leave soon, and by mistake, because they were really careless aliens, they left this laser gun. And our hero, who's mistreated in the early part of the film, he finds a laser blast gun, sees it blow shit up, and he goes and kills all of the people who tortured him. And then the aliens, they kind of in the middle of space stop and realize they left the gun. So they come back, and by now our guy's turned into like kind of an alien himself, and they kill the guy, and they take the gun back, and that's Laser Blast. But what people remember about the movie, I think most, is Dave Allen's shots. They were really magical. So Dave said to me at the time, he goes, look, Charlie, I gave you a special price. God, I'm really excited to tell you about this. I'm like, I can't wait to show you this stuff. He said, I gave you a special price, but I have a project I've been working on for 10 years, like back in the 60s. I go, okay. He said, it's called The Primevals. And it needs 14 weeks of photography, which is about 12 weeks more than we usually shot. It's going to have 260 stop motion shots, and I figure the budget is $4 to $6 million. I said, well, Dave, I appreciate the good price, but unless I win the lottery, that's not going to happen. He said, well, just know that it's a movie that needs to get made, and maybe you'll get lucky, and maybe you'll find a way to help me make this film. So for the next 20 years, Dave did amazing work for Full Moon. He did all of the early Puppet Master films. He did Dolls, if you've seen Dolls. All the stop motion. Even films like Prehysteria, he did the stop motion. And every time I would go to Dave and try to negotiate a price, he'd go, Charlie, Primevals. I said, we gotta make it. I said, Dave, it's like millions of dollars, but you never know, you never know. Finally, we're in the early 90s, mid-90s. Things were going really well, but very briefly for Full Moon. I said, Dave, let's just do it. We're gonna just fucking do it. He goes, what? I said, yeah, we're gonna make Primevals. So it was a real gamble. Unfortunately, fortunes turned by the time we were sort of in the middle of the film. But we stuck it out, and it was a 14-week shoot. We built huge sets, 9-foot Yeti skeletons, props. We shot 10 weeks at a studio we had in Romania. we shot in the Italian Alps. It was a big adventure and kind of scary because you spend all the money, you finish the movie, and then you have 2 years to do 260 stop motion animation shots. So imagine building a house, and the house is like done, but I don't know, the doors are missing or something. You can't live in that house, and you spent all the dough for 2 more years. So we began the process, and it was just magical watching the first shot, the second shot. And for those of you not familiar, you know it's one frame at a time. So I was making a slew of other movies at the time. And the most fun I had in the studio, which doesn't exist anymore, was going to visit Dave's studio inside our Full Moon studio, because they were all there, all the stop motion guys. And you come in on a Monday morning, and you'd have like the Yetis like this, and one of the lizard guys is like that, and you come back literally 3 days later, the Yeti's just like that, and the lizard guy's like that, because it took a week to do a 5-second shot. So, I'm trying to get through this so you can see the material. So the real tragedy is about 150 shots into this post-production, Dave Allen got cancer and died. And that was really bad for a million reasons. So we put everything in a box. It was also at a time when fortunes were turning, the business was turning, and we figured we'd open those boxes up one day and get the film finished, which is what we're doing. That's basically it. That's when you applaud. Yay! So luckily, Dave had a right-arm guy, a fellow named Chris Endicott, who, like all these amazing effects guys, moved into CGI. He's actually now working on the new Avengers. So Chris is rallying the troops of people who are experts in the field and who can, you know, over time, it's going to take about 8 months, finish at least enough of the stop motion animation shots to get this version out. So we're going to put it together and pull the money together, and we'll probably do a little Indiegogo campaign, and probably by June of next year, the movie will be out. So that's the story. So this footage hasn't been seen by anyone, so enjoy it. Lights out, roll.